All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Monday. It is January 6th, and this is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All in Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson. Jake is snowed in, iced in, bad weather up north. It's actually coming this way. By the time you will watch this episode, it'll probably be pretty chilly down here in Texas, and so we wish everybody safety. Don't go places you don't need to go. If it's iced over, just chill, stay home. But a lot of news for the Texas Longhorns since that Peach Bowl game that we still are riding that high on going into the Cotton Bowl, taking on Ohio State. We have some basketball news, some rumors circulating Steve Sarkisian. We will briefly touch on that. I don't think the conversation needs to get too detailed with that, but we are going to give our final thoughts on Arizona State, go through some of the post-game press conference in that Peach Bowl, and then we're going to talk Quinn Ewers' Longhorn legacy and what that Peach Bowl game did for it, and just kind of do a rundown of what his career has been at Texas and really kind of maybe change the minds or at least put into perspective of some of these fans that you hear from Texas that are just not Quinn believers or are ready for the Arch era and the Ewers era to end, which is odd because Texas is one of the final four teams remaining in the country and a very good chance at this point in the season to win a national championship, and yet still not satisfied. So we'll touch on that a little bit. Some of the officiating in that Peach Bowl obviously has made big news and stuff, and so Jake and I will touch on all of it. Jake, how are you doing? Obviously, you can see all the Christmas decor is up and it's stored in the attic now. I've taken down all decorations. It's officially just winter time. So I've been, busting my butt around the house to do all that stuff lately. But Jake, I know you're still not feeling great. You're iced in, but I appreciate you being here with me, man.
Yeah, no, it's been all of our Christmas stuff is still up. I've been sick, and so I'm not gonna have the wife put away all of that on her own. And so yeah, I've been sick, as you can probably tell a little bit by my voice, and hopefully I think I'm on the mend, but it's just still coughing, congestion.
This is your MJ flu game, man. I mean, hey, you're toughing it out
through it. I don't say podcasters don't fight through injuries. I am listed. I was listed as questionable at the start of the day, and here I am.
This is as tough of a performance as I've seen all season long, Jake. This is grit. This is the definition of grit season. It's the winter time. Our throats and our nasal congestion is at an all-time high right now. Seasonal change. So for us podcasters, I mean, we're at the end of the season too, folks. So bear with us.
And then in Kansas City, it's just wild right now. We got a ice storm last night. So right now our roads are a layer of ice underneath. And then we've gotten 12 inches of snow and counting right now. Not going out. Most workplaces are closed tomorrow. I can work from home, so I'll be working from home tomorrow. And there was like a 200 car pileup on the highway last night.
That's insane.
And I was watching some footage on YouTube where people take their drones and we'll show you. And it's just all the highways there wasn't many cars, but the cars that were on the highway were just, it looked like a post-apocalyptic thing where all the cars were just sideways, stopped, flashers on. No one could go anywhere because it was a legit ice skating rink on there. So it's going to, and we're not supposed to get over freezing anytime soon. So it's going to be interesting to see how long it takes to get these roads cleared up, because getting the ice and then the snow is a disaster. Actually, real quick, funny, our dog we have a basement, and so our upstairs is kind of like the second story. So that we have like a deck. She has to go down the stairs. We go to let her out, and we have like a big flat platform and then stairs that go down. And on the flat platform, she like cartooned when she stepped on it because it was pure ice. It was like,
and you needed to add that sound effect. Whoop, 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 whoop.
I need to add that sound effect to the soundboard so I can play it. Cause that's what she did. And then she ended up crapping in the house because I don't think she wanted to go outside because it was so bad. So
I can't blame her. You crap in the house all the time. So why can't she?
Yeah. I mean, I would take a crap on the floor before I'd go outside in this too.
It'd probably freeze on the way out.
I kind of like put my foot outside on the deck just to see how slippery it was. And like, it gets some ice skating, get some skates, and you could be out there playing hockey.
Yeah. Might be kind of nice. All right, well, Jake, let's get into it. we'll start with basketball because that happened over the weekend. On Saturday, Texas Longhorns played Texas A&M at A&M to start conference play in the SEC. Got mollywopped by 20 points, 80-60. That game was fairly close at halftime. There was only about a point advantage, I think, to A&M at half. It was tied at half, and then the second half took over, and you saw the classic vintage calling card of Rodney Terry, which is a scoring drought to start the second half. Almost no points scored, it felt like, until Texas A&M got a nice, comfortable 15-point lead, and then Texas started kind of matching points with them at that point in the second half. And Jake, I think I'm about ready to call it. I think it's time that we call for Rodney Terry's job, and I think this will be the last one that he coaches for the Texas Longhorns as the head coach.
Yeah. I mean, they also went on if you just go look at the scoring summary through the second half, they started out with just a flat line for the first 4 minutes. They didn't score a single point. Then they scored 2 points. Then they didn't score again for another 2 or 3 minutes. Then at the end of the game, they didn't score any points for the final basically 4 minutes until the last minute where it didn't matter. I'm out on Rodney Terry. A&M could not shoot the basketball, and Texas lost this game. A&M was airballing 3-pointers all over the court. They had 4 or 5 air balls.
I think they were 1 of 9 in the first half.
Well, they shot 10.5% from 3 and 1. Texas got bullied. It looked like the A&M football team out there just getting bullied by their rival. A&M did whatever they want. They completely outscored Texas in the paint. They completely efforted them. And also Texas doesn't run an offense. And we've talked about that being our main concern. And they just kind of pass the ball outside the wing. They're never attacking. A&M was constantly attacking, looking to get in the paint. Texas was just dicking around outside of the arc and getting nothing done. And I've seen a lot of people going, well, who know more about the coordinators and the assistant coaches. And apparently the assistant coach who runs the offense is one of Rodney Terry's friends who he hired this year. And so that just goes to show you in the sports world, hiring a friend who's not a good coach to run that loses you a job. And I would be shocked because I don't expect this basketball team to turn things around. I'd be shocked if CDC doesn't move on after this season, because it's going to be ugly. I mean, they're going to start conference play more than likely 0-5. And I would be shocked if they made the tournament. And quite frankly, I'd be surprised if they even made the NIT at this point.
Yeah, I don't think they're an NIT tournament, Jake, team. I don't think that they're a tournament team at all come postseason. I think the season will end in the first round of the SEC champion, or in the first round of the SEC tournament. They will be just it's going to be an ugly year for Texas basketball, because this offense is just, like you said, they don't run an offense. It's ISO offense. They maybe have a couple of passes here and there. They settle for a bad mid-range shot or a bad three-pointer. They don't ever get inside the paint. Jake, Texas A&M outscored Texas 48-16 inside the paint. And Texas also had more turnovers, 12-7 within that frame. And then they got out-rebounded by 10 rebounds, 41-31.
The defense is bad. And the rebounding felt worse than that, because A&M, it just felt like they got every offensive board that there was to get. And
Tremont Mark was your leading scorer with 14 points.
Yeah. Trey Johnson wasn't good, but again, they're not doing anything to help him.
He was Texas, bad. 2 of 13, 0 of 5 from three-pointer was Trey Johnson.
Texas only looks good when Trey Johnson's playing hero ball. And it still doesn't even look good then. Also, you look at their schedule, their best win is Syracuse. Syracuse is 6-8. And they've gotten blasted by a bunch of bad teams. Yeah. And Texas barely won that game. I think this Texas team is it's going to have a chance to be one of the worst basketball teams we've ever seen, which is crazy, because it is way more talented than a lot of those bad teams that we have seen in our lifetimes. I know they lack a big man, or at least depth at big man, especially. It doesn't matter. With the amount of scoring ability they have on this team, and proven scoring ability that have gone elsewhere or played elsewhere before and averaged 15 points. 16 points, and then coming here and struggling. I mean, this is a coaching issue, and Rodney Terry's got to go. I wouldn't care if they fired him mid-season once
And
they're 0-5, 0-6 in conference play.
and put his friend in charge of the head coaching as the interim.
At least we'll know that you're looking for a new head coach at that point, because something's got to change there.
Here's the way I look at it, Jake. A&M is probably going to finish. I don't think they are going to be the Auburns or the Tennessees. I don't see them, sweeping in Alabama or even.
Did you see what Alabama did to OU?
I think A&M is going to end up being middle of the pack in the SEC. Probably a tournament team. Don't get me wrong, but they are not going to finish this conference season, atop the top 5 or 6 in my own personal opinion. And so, for Texas to get blown out by a team that's going to finish middle of the pack against an arch rival in Texas A&M, that shows you everything you need to know about where this Texas team is, because A&M is probably going to be in that 6-7 range, probably right on the bubble of making the tournament within this conference this year. And if they make a deep conference run, sure, they can make a little bit more noise that way. But this Texas team is just not it this year, and expect pretty bad things for the remainder of the season in terms of wins, losses.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't beat a good team. Every good team they've played, they've lost to handedly at that, starting with the Ohio State game. And Ohio State's not even good. The UConn game was embarrassing. And you look at that, the SEC this year in basketball, I talked about over and over how the SEC in basketball was a step down for Texas from the Big 12. Well, not this year. The SEC's loaded this year. And you look at, Alabama, that game when Texas plays Alabama in basketball, they might lose by 100 because OU's a pretty good team this year in basketball, and Bama beat them 107-79.
Yeah, it's going to be ugly, Jake. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit on a positive note. Women's basketball beating OU 80-73 in Norman to start conference play. So a nice start for the number 5 Longhorns there on the women's basketball side of things. Yeah,
they every now and then they lack some outside shooting, but that said, you can tell they're a well-coached team. They run better offense than the men's team does. They might be able to beat the men's team. They have some turnover issues. They have some shooting. They have some issues that I think are going to cost them against those top 2 or 3 teams you get in women's college basketball every year. But they're certainly looking like an Elite 8, maybe a Final 4 type team this year. And you can see the direction this program is continuing to move in, that I feel like a national championship should be in the near future with Vic Schaefer at the helm.
Yeah. All righty. Well, and I think, with Vic Schaefer, like you said, Jake, I trust this team. He knows this team very well. They're playing as a collective group. They were 4 of 6 from 3-pointers. So, their percentages are nice. And that was mostly led by Jordan Lee, who went 4 or 5 at the 3-point line and led the team against OU in scoring off the bench with 17 points. Rory Harmon had 16 points. She went 5 of 13, but was 6 of 8 from the free throw line, had 8 assists as well. And just an overall good team effort, beating a very good Oklahoma team to start conference playoff. It's a nice sign of things to come for the Texas Longhorns women's basketball team for sure.
Yeah, I'll be excited to see how they finish. The SEC's loaded in women's basketball too. It'll be they look like they'll have a chance to at least finish like top 3 in the conference.
All right, Jake, let's move and switch to football. Final thoughts on Arizona State. Texas had about 60 total snaps in a double overtime game. They had 21 of those in the first half. They did up their snap total in the second half with 36, and then lost time of possession by 38 minutes to 22. Was outrushed 214 yards to 53 yards and was outgained in total yards 510 to 322, allowed 10 third down conversions and 3 fourth down conversions, had 10 penalties to Arizona State's 6, and still won the football game. Jake, final thoughts on this game. It felt like, it looked like, it seemed like Texas got completely dominated in this game, at least by the box score. I think if you watched the game, you probably didn't feel that way. You probably felt that Texas was dominating, especially early on. But in terms of the total offense and the total game stats, Texas got outplayed in every aspect of this game, and it was mostly due to Cam Scatterbu and his offensive MVP performance as the losing team. First time that's ever happened in Peach Bowl history.
Yeah, and it was deserved. It was deserved. There, I mean, Golden or Ewers would have been for Texas, but Scatterbo was just so. He was pretty quiet the whole first half. Texas dominated the first half despite what the ending box score even maybe looked like at halftime. Because I think Arizona State was outgaining them at halftime too. Texas really dominated that first half. They just didn't have possessions because what Arizona State did a good job of was they did have drives where they moved the football in the first half to take up time. They just weren't scoring on them. And then Texas, people forget, Texas had a 6-minute drive in that first half. So when you have Arizona State have, a few 3, 4, 5-minute drives in the first half, and then you have Texas have a 6-minute drive, you have a punt return for a touchdown, and then you have a 3 and out. That's all you get for the Texas offense in the first half. So going back and watching the game, the first half was one where I look at it and I was go, the offense didn't really play bad in the first half. They played pretty good in the first half. They just didn't get opportunities. They had the ball 4 times. The 5th time, they were just taking it to half.
Right.
And so they had 4 real possessions. So what really stood out to me from this game was Arizona State just executing a game plan. Even in that first half, where Texas kind of dominated it, Arizona State was still executing their game plan of limiting possessions for Texas, finding ways to get first downs and run the clock. They weren't getting points off of it, but it didn't matter because as you wear that Texas defense, you get him on there for more snaps. You keep the Texas offense off the field. Scatterbo just wore on that defense as the game went on. And you saw that in the second half. That was when he started to break some runs. That was when the trickery started to come in for Arizona State as well. Also in that first half was the fake punt, which extended a drive. And so it was a really weird game. Going back and watching it, there was no real flow to this game at all.
Especially for Texas. I mean, and I got to give Dillingham his credit. I mean, as a coach, he executed his game plan to perfection in terms of the only avenue. And you and I talked about the only avenue for this Arizona State team to have success and win this game against Texas was to control the clock, limit turnovers, and have a Cam Scatterbo performance that is just going to dominate, and everyone's going to look back at it and say this is the Cam Scatterbo game. And that's exactly what happened. And they nearly won, and they still lost the game. And so they took their only avenue, and they executed to near perfection, except for a couple of moments at the end of the game. And I want to talk we'll get into Quinn Ewers' legacy as a Longhorn here shortly, but those second half drives where he led Texas into field goal range, not once, but twice by converting big time 3rd down conversions, a big time 4th down conversion, which I thought was picked, but it was a beautiful throw to Golden, and Golden was able to get his feet in bounds on like a 4th and 4, 4th and 6, something like that.
Is 4th in overtime?
I think in regulation in the second half. Yeah. And so the 4th and 13 overtime touchdown one. Yeah. That was obviously a big play too, but
brain, you just have to excuse me.
Yeah, no. But I think, you can't understate the importance of the Quinn Ewers, Matthew Golden. I mean, there was a Matthew Golden, that seam route down the sideline where it's just perfectly placed on, I think it was 3rd and 13 or something like that, where they just went deep on the sideline and he brought it in. Was just a phenomenal couple of plays by 2 guys that seem to be on the very, good page with one another, the repertoire between quarterback and wide receiver with Ewers and Golden. Jake, I do want to talk about a little bit of the running game, wrapping up some thoughts here. Then we'll get into the kind of the controversy of the targeting penalty and the officiating in general. But in terms of play on the field, I want to talk about the running back usage in this game to see if it was what Arizona State's defense was doing to force Sarks' hand a little bit. Was it just kind of, again, we get in these games where Jaden Blue doesn't get enough touches, 5 touches for Jaden Blue. He had 4 rushes on 4 yards, 1 catch for 11 yards, and he had 15 total on those 5 touches for Jaden Blue. Trey Wisner averaged 2.5 yards per rush on 18 carries. He did have 4 catches for 40 yards. So effectively used Wisner in the passing game, but the usage of these running backs, Jake, what happened there? What have you seen? What have you kind of come to the realization of with that?
Well, there was no rhythm for the offense. And to me, the change that Sarkisian can make there is start some drives with Jaden Blue. Because what was happening was they were getting on the field. If they tried running it, the drive died. And then if they threw it, that was when Sarkisian started sticking with the pass through times in this game. And that was when Texas offense had their most success. He was really trying to run it at the start, in that early second half because they had a lead. And that's what Texas has done all year. Get a lead, run the football, and end the game with a win. But to me, it sticks out of Blue will come in on a lot of possessions when you're in the middle of the possession. As a kind of change of pace, he doesn't start a lot of possessions off in the backfield. And so when you have an offense that gets very limited snaps and very limited possessions, because they were very limited, they had 2 possessions in the third quarter. And really I think the second one was at the end of the quarter, and went into the fourth quarter. So you basically didn't touch the ball at all this whole game. And so the way to counteract that is when Weisner's not having it going, which he obviously did not. I think you start a possession with Blue in there to start it and give him a carry to start the possession versus kind of bringing him in as a change of pace. So that is something I think Sarkisian could change as far as the usage. But when you look at this game individually at the same time, I see what happened when you go back and watch it. They just didn't have very many possessions. And, I go back and saying the offense didn't really play that bad in the first half. In the second half, is that those first 2 possessions were horrible. The 3-play, 2-sack punt drive, the safety, but then they had a long touchdown drive. Then they had the bad interception by Quinn, and then they had 2 drives that should have won the game where they missed field goals on both of them. So it's just a weird game for me. Going back, it felt weird watching it. Felt even more weird going back and watching it.
Yeah, rewatching it.
Wow. Texas just never had the football. And some of that was on the offense. Some of that was on the defense, too. Yeah. The defense did not get off the field in this game.
No. Like I said, 10 third down conversions for Arizona State. Now, they had like 24 of them, but still having 10 third down conversions. But you also converted 3 of the fourth down conversions. And so and
the fake punt.
And the fake punt. So you're extending drives by doing that, keeping the defense on the field, keeping Texas's offense off the field. So it's complementary football, and Sark talks about it all the time. And the offense didn't complement the defense didn't complement the offense, and it just seemed like they were never on the same page, working together at the same time, except for the first two drives of the game.
Even then, you still had on the I think it was the opening drive.
Arizona State's got a field goal in the opening drive.
Yeah, but didn't that drive Texas stop them to 4th down, and then that was the personal foul or the running into the kicker?
Maybe I'm thinking Notre Dame, Georgia. I don't.
Yeah,
I know there was a couple roughing the punters, but I do think Texas did run.
So that is what happened. So Arizona State got a 1st down to open the game. Then they were 4th and 4 on their own 31. Penalty. They punted it to Texas. Texas got a 15-yard penalty for roughing the kicker, where I don't know how it did not get blocked. I don't know what Blackwell was doing.
Blackwell moved his body out of the way, put his hands up.
Tried to not block it and hit the punter.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge special teams mistake that hurt the defense, because then Arizona State goes on and has 12 plays, 63 yards for a field goal. That never happens if not for that roughing the kicker. Texas did a lot of this to themselves, and then you compound that with Arizona State also playing very well, having a very good game plan. And Arizona State was not a bad football team going into this. They played some of their best football, and Leavitt was going back and watching it too. I thought Leavitt played really well, just from the standpoint of he should have been sacked 8 times in this game if he didn't just play NCAA football and just run around and
that goes into the old I think it was fourth quarter, maybe even overtime. It was the 2-point conversion, the second 2-point conversion, where he's scrambling around and guys are trying to sack him. He avoids 2 or 3 sacks, and then there's a holding penalty in the end zone, because how much longer can you cover in the end zone?
There was also 2 linemen in the end zone that were illegal men downfield, but that was a call. But hey, the refs.
So let's get into it.
Texas the game.
let's get into that because the overtime touchdown by Cam Scatterbo, I texted you immediately after, and I said, wait a second, I don't think that's a legal play for an offensive lineman to carry a runner into the end zone and drag him into it. None of the broadcasters brought it up. Jesse Palmer or Joe Tessitore, neither of them brought it up in terms of that's an illegal play. And I texted you when that happened. That should not have counted. It should have been I think it's just like a 10-yard penalty or something.
It's a 5-yard. It's a 5-yard penalty,
but it's not
which
a loss
is a
down.
big deal on the goal line.
But it's replay the down, and it's another opportunity for the Texas defense to step up and make a stop. And so that should have been called, but instead it was a Scatterbo touchdown. There was a targeting penalty that they reviewed, not Michael Taft, but against Isaiah Bond on the Quinn Ewers interception. That was also negated and said no targeting. And if you're going to stay consistent with the officiating, which they did in that aspect of, we reviewed this targeting penalty, it was not called against Isaiah Bond on the Quinn Ewers interception. They stayed consistent and didn't call the exact same tackle with Michael Taft on the 4th down play.
It wasn't even the exact same. The Arizona State defender was trying to take Isaiah Bond's head off. That was his objective. He launched into his head and tried to decapitate him. Michael Taft was doing what you're taught as a football player. That is how you tackle. You have your head up, you drive through the carrier, you don't launch into him, you drive through him, and you wrap up. That is exactly what Taft did. That tackle should be shown as to how to form tackle for younger players. That is how you form tackle. You don't put your head down. You don't lead with the crown of your helmet. Put your head down, because that's how you get hurt and the other guy gets hurt. He puts his head up, and guess what? It's football. Sometimes there's hard collisions. And, if you want to, I've seen targeting.
People focus.
I will say,
people solely focus on
like that called.
Yes, and people solely focus, and that's a whole other thing, Jake, is because nobody really knows what targeting is anymore. Whether you're a talking head like you and I with a podcast talking about it, or whether you're an official or a fan or what have you, no one really knows what targeting is anymore, because targeting penalties have been called to where you lead with your face mask and you're wrapping up, and just because it's in the head neck area, that's the only criteria some people want to have as targeting. That's not what targeting is. It's not just a tackle to the head neck area. It's leading and launching with the crown of your helmet into the head or neck area on a defenseless player. That is what targeting is. I would say maybe one of those things happened with Michael Taft, and I don't even know if you can say he was a defenseless player, because he had caught the pass and he was just making a defensive tackle. And so for me, Jake, Michael Taft had his face mask up. You can go look at the replay. Face mask was up, head was up, made a form tackle, did not launch into anybody, and he just made a play. And I do think that this does matter. And I've heard other people. I think as a referee, you have to have this separate. You have to separate yourself a little bit from the play itself and say, what was the intention of this player? And I know you can never really know that, because that you should. And it's very difficult to say, like, did Taft target this receiver and go into him with a malicious intent? I don't think you can obviously say he did not do that. He was just making a football play and trying to wrap up in the middle of the field. And I thought the call was right. I didn't think it was targeting. I could see how people obviously think it was targeting. And my thing is, if you're not going to call the targeting on Isaiah Bond, you couldn't call the call on 4th down against Michael Taft. That was my biggest thing, is they stayed consistent with it. Because if you call it against Michael Taft, you're admitting that the Isaiah Bond one that you didn't overturn was a targeting, because if anything, it was worse, right? By
a lot. And also, for all the people coping, which it seems to be a lot of OU and A&M fans, by the way, that are the ones coping. I've posted you can go on my Twitter. I've posted a Donald Duck meme. It's something that rhymes with duck meme on there to some of those fans that are just sitting there praying that Texas loses at some point. But if you're going to say the refs cost Arizona State the game, go back and watch the game, and you're kidding yourself. The refs kept
Texas
Arizona
had more
State
penalties
in the game.
Yeah,
if
Texas
anything, with multiple times they had illegal men down the field, including on the fake punt. They had 97 snaps, no holdings called, probably about 20 to 30 that were blatantly obvious that they could have called. I mean, just blatant, and that they didn't. And so you can sit there at the Cam Scatabo going into the end zone. You have the missed pass interference that happened to Wingo or Holding, where he's pulling his jersey for the whole world to see 3 yards, like pulling the jersey back 3 yards. You have Scatabo where the play where Taft did the face mask should have been offsetting penalties. They called pass interference on Taft. I don't know how. If there's any pass interference there, it's Scatabo. If you're going to sit there and cope that you think the refs won Texas this game, especially when we had Georgia fans saying that we were coping with the SEC game when there was a blatant penalty discrepancy, Texas had more penalties called in this game. People say Texas has the refs in their back pocket. They better get their money back because they are not getting what they paid for. They're one of the most penalized teams in the country, and they're one of the worst teams in the country at the amount of penalties the team they're facing gets as well.
Yeah. And that's to me is anybody who's upset and claiming that the referees were on Texas's side and cost Arizona State the game was either A, betting the game, or B, just wants Texas to lose because they're against Texas. And it's like, you hate Alabama, you hate Georgia, you hate these teams that are the brand names and you don't want them to win anymore. And that's perfectly fine. But those are your two options, was either you're betting Arizona State in this game, or you just want Texas to lose because you're an OU fan or an Arizona State fan or a Texas A&M fan or what have you, because you hate Texas. And that's perfectly fine. I get that. But some of the national media saying it's a little off base, and it tells me that they didn't watch the full game, or they, don't have some type of skin in the game in terms of money bets. That being said, Jake, let's go ahead. Post-game press conference in the Peach Bowl. The one big thing that I wanted to talk about was Sark saying, Quinn Ewers, man, well, y'all may not know it. This dude's a G. He called him a certified gangsta, baby. He just calm, cool, collected, never gets too high, never gets too low. And you saw that. We've actually complained about that in games this season, especially at home against Georgia, where he's just kind of like on the sideline, not showing a whole lot of emotion, just even keel. And I'm kind of like, dude, we need some kind of energy, like pump somebody up, like get in somebody's face, like get into the offensive line or a little bit, like show some emotion a little bit, but just even keel. Same thing in this game. And it cost them a victory this time, not so much a defeat like it did against Georgia.
Yeah. I mean, him audibling into the perfect protection on that 4th and 13, hot routing into the route for Golden, and then delivering a deep pass down the middle of the field, which is not something that he's done well this year, but stepped into the pass, stayed calm. And then I don't know if you saw Sarkisian too, just stone-faced after the touchdown, just calm as can be. That is a historic moment in Longhorn football. And obviously that will only rise. It can only rise from here, that moment where if Texas finds a way to beat Ohio State, go on to national championship, if they won a national championship, that is, well, I mean, where's that rank in your all-time plays? That's got to be, it'd be number 2. If they go on to win a national title, unless there's a crazy play in the national title that causes
we may not
them to win it or something, we don't get another moment like that. Let's just say they win the next 2 games by 2 possessions. Hypothetical world. That play would be number 2 on my all-time plays list.
Right behind the Vince Young
4th and 5.
Yep. Right behind the Vince Young scramble for a touchdown in the national championship to win it, essentially. So
that was Quinn's moment. That was his moment. All the fans have been, because so many of his big games have been them winning by 2 or more possessions, which is not a bad thing.
When this season is all said and done, Jake, let's go ahead and do a little Mount Rushmore of Texas Longhorn plays of all time, because I think you obviously have the Colt McCoy, Quan Cosby play in there. You've got a couple of other options that see where we rank these plays that at least in our lifetime. So including in that post game, Jake, Sark talked about the adversity for this team to overcome things. You lose the lead in the Peach Bowl. You've got the Scataboo or Scatathrow, however you want to call it, the really cool play in which they scored a touchdown. And that was the Sarks quote, not mine, but the really cool play from Scataboo. That's what Sark said in the post game. Ultimate football guy to be able to call that play a really cool play when it nearly cost you a season. But the adversity to overcome things throughout the season, whether that be the Georgia game, the SEC game, Quinn getting hurt. He said it goes all the way back to Baxter getting hurt in camp this season, and you lose one of your leaders in the locker room. You lose one of your best players, an important part of your offense, and this offense has yet to, they've skipped a couple beats, but the team hasn't let down one another. They've continued to lift each other up, and I just think that speaks volumes in terms of the leadership on this team. Quinn, with a big part of that as the quarterback, but also the offensive linemen, some of the defensive leaders, whether that be an Anthony Hill or what have you. Alfred Collins, some of the older guys on the team, Michael Taff, Andrew Makuba, Jahdae Barron, having those voices in the locker room and faces of adversity sets your team up to have success and win a game like they did against Arizona State.
Yeah. I'm going to harp on the Quinn book because I think it's obvious the Jahdae Barrons, the Kelvin Banks, the Jake Majors, the Anthony Hills, the Michael Tass, all those leaders out, but Quinn doesn't get talked about as the leader as much from the fan base side, at least in the national media perspective. But look at what the players do. I mean, you have players wearing Quinn Ewers shirts. You have Ryan Wingo and other guys tweeting out or, posting on their Instagram stories being like, we don't accept Quinn slander here. He's the GOAT and all this type of stuff. And, Quinn's he has flaws, and we have criticized him plenty. So I'm not saying you can't criticize him at times when he struggles or makes a stupid play or whatever. Criticism's fine. But the level that it's got to with him at times in the fan base of bench him, he sucks. He's the only reason this team isn't going to win a national title. All that type of talk is pretty disrespectful to the legacy he's going to leave at Texas when it's all said and done. And the fact that we're not 10 years deep into Texas being good again. This is year 2 of Texas being, this is the start of Texas being a good football program again. And he's the one who's turned that around. He's the one who's been at the helm. And so he deserves a lot more credit than he gets from the national
Gunner
media.
helm.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. That was a little bit of a miss there. That was a Bird Auburn kick.
Oh, wow.
But no, what the players say about him speaks louder than anyone else. And the players in the locker room standing up for him and posting the things they do says everything I need to know about the leader that Quinn is in that locker room and on the field. He may not be outwardly emotional all the time showing it, but it tells me to all the players, they know he's the leader of the team.
Well, and you kind of want that. As frustrating as it can be for a fan of not seeing your raw quarterback. We're used to seeing, a Drew Brees or, a Phillip Rivers, kind of this outspoken leader of guys. But, even Tom Brady got fired up on the sideline with some of his guys, or Peyton Manning and stuff like that. And sometimes you don't see those qualities, but I think it goes to show how much these guys respect Quinn for just allowing them to do their job. And as we continue to glaze Quinn Ewers, let's just go ahead and get into his legacy as a Texas Longhorn and what this moment, the 4th and 13, the touchdown throw to Helm to start the second overtime, those plays, the drives that he led to get Texas into field goal range that was eventually missed by the kicker, but got him into overtime. And 27-8 career overall record, leading Texas to back-to-back 12-win seasons. That should be enough to cement him as one of the best and greatest Texas Longhorn quarterbacks, but that's not where the list stops. He's beaten OU twice. Both of those wins, complete blowouts. Beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Big 12 champion in the final season in the conference. He got Texas their first playoff berth in the playoff era, and that was in the 14 playoff. Beat Michigan in the Big House. Beat Texas A&M at Kyle Field after a 13-year hiatus. Made the SEC championship appearance in year 1 in the SEC. Back-to-back playoff appearances. Back-to-back semifinal appearances. 2-1 in playoff games, beating an ACC and Big 12 champion opponent. 26 straight games with a passing touchdown. He's third all-time in passing with 8,845 yards behind Sam Ehlinger at number 2 and number 1, Colt McCoy. Quinn also has played 3 seasons, so 11 less games than Sam and 18 less games than Colt McCoy to be third all-time on that list. He's third all-time in passing touchdowns, third all-time in completions and attempts, and he has less interceptions thrown than Colt, Sam, and Vince Young with 23. Where does he match up in your Mount Rushmore of Texas Longhorn legacy players?
First off, I'm just going to talk about players that we've seen. It's too hard to go back and be like James Street. Like I didn't watch him play. I don't
Yeah.
know. I know what
E-
he's done, but
even in Earl Campbell, like as
yeah,
much as
no,
we love Earl Campbell, we still didn't watch him out there on the
yeah,
field play.
it's not the same. And so I'm just going to keep it to quarterbacks, but for me, he'd be third right now. Right behind Vince is 1, Colts 2, he's 3, Sam Elger's 4.
Mhm.
That's what it is for me. I think that's what it should be for a lot of people. I think a lot of people,
If he wins a
our
national
age group,
championship, Jake, if he wins a national championship, what
he's
does it
above
do?
Colt. He's above Colt. I don't know if I don't think he's above Vince because Vince had to go Superman at times.
Vince was not only robbed of a Heisman. I don't think you can ever say that Quinn was robbed of a Heisman Trophy year.
No.
Vince was robbed of a Heisman Trophy. He played 3 seasons. I think he had 30 some odd wins, so he's still above Quinn in terms of winning seasons or wins in a career. The dude lost 2 games as a starter for the Texas Longhorns. Vince Young did, and he won a national championship. I think that will remain number 1 until beaten otherwise.
Yeah, 2 Rose Bowls. I mean, you won a Big 12 championship 70-3. Like,
right, yeah.
Like Vince Young's going to be hard to top for anyone. But yeah, I mean, it would jump him above Colt, which I think a lot of people might not like that. But if he wins that national title, it just does. His body of work is too impressive. And yes, there are times where it's not pretty or there's struggles, but I think people just forget when other guys struggled or when other players had rough times or bad games or whatever. And just everything is under such a microscope in today's football world because of social media and that not being around as big as it is now back, in the Colt McCoy, especially the Vince Young days. And then going even further back than that, everything is under such a microscope now where every play call can be for the play callers. Every play call can be criticized online and being like, this guy sucks because of that one play call, or this quarterback sucks because of that one throw, or whatever it is, where every play is under a microscope on social media. But at the end of the day, that what you just said speaks for itself. Most of that stuff has been in the last 2 years, winning at Alabama, winning at A&M, beating the snot out of OU 2 out of the last 3 years, and then winning at Michigan, who were the returning national champions.
Yep.
All these things that he's done have just been the last 2 years, 2 back-to-back conference championship appearances, 2 back-to-back semifinal appearances. You have to respect what he's done, even if he's limited in some areas of his game.
Perfectly said, Jake. And I completely agree. I mean, I made that list for a reason because I have him up there probably at number 3 right now. And my love for Sam Ehlinger, in terms of favorite players, that's a different list. In terms of your accomplishments and your winning ability and your overall legacy in terms of being a starting quarterback and winning football games, he's got to be sitting at number 3 right now. And that's because Colt McCoy has gotten to a national championship and played and represented the Longhorns in a national championship and also won a Fiesta Bowl for Texas, whereas Quinn has the Peach Bowl. He has a New Year's Six bowl game under his belt, has a chance to win a Cotton Bowl, and has a chance to win a national championship. So his story not yet completed. But Vince Young, obviously, with the Rose Bowl championship and then the national championship in the Rose Bowl, those matter. Those still matter, and you have to add that. You have to include that into the overall, overall spectrum of the success and legacy of a college football player, especially one at Texas, and where it's not just personal accolades, but it's team success as well. And I think he sits at number 3 right now, and that tells you something. I mean, he brought Texas. Also, Sam had a part in this whole like bringing Texas back thing, but he never got over that hump, especially after the Sugar Bowl win over Georgia. It was a downturn on that senior season, unfortunately. Quinn has only topped his performance. He's gotten better and better and better. You get an 8-win season, you get a 12-win season, and now you're at a 13-win season. You've only increased the amount of wins that you've seen from Quinn each year, and I think that also has something to say about it as well.
Yeah, and the stats it's not like his stats aren't there to be in this conversation. They are.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
they all are. I mean, his stats are right there. with those greats to be up there in this conversation. And so, yeah, I mean, everyone's going to be very, or a lot of people are going to be very uncomfortable with the fact that he absolutely belongs in that conversation. And if they win this Cotton Bowl, he'll be very close to Colt McCoy, even if they lose a national title at that point. And I think there's like 50% of the fan base that just doesn't see it that way. Then there's 50% of the fan base that is still letting it play out. And hopefully the people who are letting it play out end up looking really smarter. Good with him. Yeah. With they still have a chance to win a national title. Sarkisian already said it. We'll get into it tomorrow's episode, but hey, no one thinks Texas can beat Ohio State. Ohio State's unbeatable. They're a buzzsaw. Texas is going to get killed. But there's still a football game to be played on Friday.
Yeah, and we are going to get into that conversation starting tomorrow on Tuesday's episode. Again, we want you to like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate all the schedule changes that we've had to deal with and stuff. So we will be releasing this episode on Monday. Typically, we do Tuesday through Saturday. We're going to do Monday through Friday because Texas plays on Friday, and we'll give you our immediate reaction following the football game on Friday night. But with all that being said, Monday through Thursday, we'll be dropping these episodes at noon, and then leading up to the Ohio State Cotton Bowl game in the semifinals of the college football playoffs, we will give you our immediate reaction on Friday. For Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. This is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns, right here, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.